What up, my Gummy Knights, and welcome back to the Echo Chamber. Okay, so we have another one of these. I know. It has been a long hiatus since the last one, and I'm actually pretty sad at myself. It's not that I haven't had videos to talk about necessarily, or, people to talk about in terms of discussion of this, but it hasn't been so egregious that I thought I needed to. There was times where I had to end up getting the facts wrong, and I don't want to be that guy who sits there and puts out a video where it's like, I'm talking about stuff as if they're objective, when I'm completely off basis when it comes to the actual factual and empirical data that's supposed to be presented. That being said, we do indeed have another one, and we have broken our hiatus, another workshop title, and unfortunately, it is against one of my favorite people. Let's go on and get into this.
Last night took a L, but tonight I bounce back. Wake up every morning, by the night I count stacks. Knew that ass was real when I hit it, bounce back.
Now this video comes at us from one Critical Drinker, and now I personally like Critical Drinker. I'm not going to sit there and say I've agreed with everything, hence the whole reason of this video, but I'm not going to say I've disagreed with most of what he's had to offer in terms of his takes that he has on certain movies, films, and games of the like. Now, unfortunately, this is one of those takes that is like, it starts off good, and he has two parts. I am well aware he has two parts, and maybe, just maybe, there's some corrections here, but I'm just going to strictly be going off of this first video that I've seen of this, and it's about his anatomy of disaster when describing and reviewing the Justice League movie. Now with this, a lot of the critiques and stuff that he levies out against this movie, I am pretty much in line with. So anyway, sticking right here to the part one. Alright, so pointing out my first point of contention, it's when he's describing the scene of the battle between, as he puts it, the people of Middle Earth versus Steppenwolf, when Steppenwolf first arrives and shows up thousands of years ago. Now, there is indeed something wrong with that scene in the context of that scene, but it's the exact opposite of what he said was wrong with it. About describing the idea that he doesn't know how or is able to comprehend or understand why they're able to push Steppenwolf back and actually overcome and defeat him.
Steppenwolf tried to conquer the world thousands of years ago using the Mother Boxes, but the free peoples of Planet Earth, united against him and defeated him in battle. Fuck knows how, because he had an entire army of spaceships and parademons armed with advanced particle beam weapons at his disposal, but whatever.
Now, to be fair, this scene, and this is where I would say is another problem with the film, it does in some aspects, in some regards, require you to know a little bit of lore and a little bit of backstory on the people who are fighting within this battle, in order for you to be able to kind of like comprehend as to why these people are able to push back Steppenwolf. However, it doesn't take that much, and there's quite a lot of obvious things, including in several scenes that he shows within his own video, that kind of prove and showcase to you as to how powerful these people are and why they're that powerful. Sometimes it's in the very title. Like I said, it's the exact opposite, or it's the other way around. In fact, the fact that Steppenwolf even remotely survives this encounter is palpably ridiculous, considering that this movie is relying on lore and context, given that you know a little bit about the myths of these people, or again that you can look at things like titles. But even then, regardless of that fact, you don't actually really need to go into that much lore, despite the fact that you will need indeed a little bit just to understand full context, not the entirety of the context or the context which were presented for the scene, but just full context in terms of backstory and stuff like that for a lot of these individual people, including Steppenwolf. Which, by the way, another one of my complaints of this is we know virtually nothing about Steppenwolf. Now look, as someone who is a comic book fan, as someone who has read up on Steppenwolf, I know about Steppenwolf, but I would assume that the vast majority of people who would be watching this movie have no fucking clue who Steppenwolf is. So, you think more context would be warranted. So, Drinker essentially says that he doesn't understand or is able to comprehend as to why Steppenwolf lives, because he has spaceships and he has advanced weaponry.
Great.
Okay, so let me tell you what the other team has. Gods, super warriors, and a literal space cop who is from a corps of space cops whose power are strong enough to literally threaten whole worlds. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. Steppenwolf surviving in this is the real thing to call into question, especially given the context that he's only really bringing in Parademon soldiers as his backup. Now look, if he had brought Calabac or Darkseid, that'd be a bit different. But to kind of like expound upon this point, did he literally forget the context of there are actual gods there? By the way, gods who not only are rivals to beings like Darkseid who is way more powerful than Steppenwolf, leagues above Steppenwolf, you know, gods like Zeus, who are comparable to gods and beings like Highfather, you know, beings who fight Darkseid on a constant basis and fight his troops on a constant basis. These divine beings. And in fact, he shows the scenes where they are using their powers and abilities. Like, he has literal fucking Zeus there. And he says this? He says this nonsense? I mean, for crying out loud, when Justice League does indeed establish us that even people like Batman, who at most would be peak physical human, can take out these parademons. And we'll get to that point of contention later. When that Batman could take out these parademon soldiers, you really expect me to believe that Steppenwolf, who only brought these guys against a slew of gods who in the scenes and context in which we see, are literally one-shotting these beings and shooting down their ships and stuff like as though it's just another fucking day of the week. I mean, come on. I already established what the connection and the rivalry of who these beings rank up against. And like I said, you may say, oh, well, we need a bit more context and lore. And I admit there is some context that needs to be had there, but for fuck's sake, God is in the name. If nothing else, any of the normies who would be watching this, who don't know a thing about comics, would know, like, oh my god, these are gods. And then on top of that, we also have the Green Lanterns, who literally take down ships like this all the time, who literally able to smash up on things like parademons of all time. Again, they are planetary threats. And if you actually want to say, well, we need a bit of reference of their powers, I know it's not a good movie or whatever, people don't like it, but you could actually even look at the Green Lantern film for some context in terms of seeing at least bare minimum a standard of which you would say what they are capable of, considering that the Green Lantern who we see actually fighting here does showcase a lot of the prominent abilities and stuff that would be associated with Green Lanterns. Where in that movie, Hal Jordan literally punches a super sentient monster as big as the main ship, bare minimum as big as the main ship, from Steppenwolf over here. He literally just summons a giant fist and punches it into the sun. Yeah, it just goes to show you that these guys are no joke. And then on top of that, like I said, you had a bunch of super warriors, that being the Amazons. Now, Steppenwolf does kind of take out the Amazons in this movie, but the context for those scenes are a bit different. In terms like he's using teleportation, and it's just them without any backups from things like Green Lanterns, other superpowered individuals, and gods. It's just them by themselves. But even then, we know that the Amazons are pretty much stronger than your average soldiers. They're a race of super soldiers who actually train by doing things like, I don't know, blocking bullets. You know, stuff that no real normal person is fast enough or strong enough to be able to do. And again, like I pointed out, we see people like Batman, just by him lonesome, able to take on several of these parademons and even hit one so hard that he knocks it 10 feet away that it's still scraping across the ground just to stop itself. Come on, man. There is no way you look at the context of this scene and all the information that we presented and then open your mouth and say that, man, Steppenwolf should have honestly won this fight. I don't understand. He has ships. He has particle weapons. Okay, what else does he have? Does he have any type of weapons that can kill gods? I'm just assuming that having a bunch of laser weapons aren't going to really do much to them. It doesn't seem like it's something that's a one-shot insta-kill. But again, we're talking about gods and space warrior cops who literally combat that stuff all the time. Mainly the space warrior cops, not necessarily gods, but again, the gods nonetheless. I mean, for crying out loud, you literally see Zeus like using chain lightning and fucking Artemis fucking blow down one of these ships. And he's like, man, how does Steppenwolf lose? I mean, for crying out loud, the movie does point this out to you. They do take an effort to explain it.
Even the gods themselves all acted as one.
And showcase you that, okay, these aren't Amazons, these aren't your average soldiers or warriors. These are literally divine beings. So, in fact, the problem that actually is with this scene is the exact opposite of what the drinker said. It's It's the fact that Steppenwolf survives as long as he does. Or that he even gets to escape at all. I mean, I'm going to be entirely honest. He should be a dead man. Even if they can't necessarily defeat him, despite, again, who the gods tend to rival, yes, they would absolutely obliterate Steppenwolf, especially gods like Zeus, top tier, would obliterate Steppenwolf with no difficulty. That's besides the point. The entire point of what's wrong with that scene is that Steppenwolf does as good as he does, and that he even remotely survives. Now, I won't criticize too much because he still ends up losing, which rightfully so, but come on. Definitely should not survive, and that was my problem with that scene, especially given the context. Now, I have a lot more lore than most individuals will have. Like I said, I've made that point several times, and I hate to be repetitive, but it is a big point that I understand that there should be more lore and context there that is explained to you, the audience, especially, normie people who may not have any idea or any connection or reference to the amount of power and stuff that these beings tend to possess or what have you. I get that, but there is enough there to kind of convey to you a pretty decent and I would say solid explanation as to why these beings are able to do what they do. And it's not like doing homework or writing for the film. It's essentially just putting the pieces of what they give you together. Alright, so the next set of contentions here would actually be around the basis that this dude just doesn't understand how a fight works. I mean, I hate to do this, but I have to get a bit nerdy on you guys. I had to talk about some nerd shit real quick. Okay, so in terms of how a fight tends to work, especially when it comes within the realms of fictions, is you have different subsets of groups in terms of abilities with strength, speed, dexterity, different numbers in terms of how you can tend to power scale. And it's often a bad thing to try to use A-B logic to say that, oh, because person A beats person B, that means they could beat person C, right? That A beats C or whatever, without understanding context or environmental factors or different types of variables as to why that was able to happen. In terms of him describing the scene here with Wonder Woman versus Steppenwolf, like we already know that Wonder Woman is able to take on godlike beings. Again, we see that in her movie. But we already know that Wonder Woman is able to take on godlike beings with immense strength, speed, and ability that is either comparable to hers or more powerful than hers. There is absolutely nothing wrong with the scene, especially given the context of what we see Wonder Woman do later, and in terms of her taking on Superman, and the fact that we already previously established that she is this strong and comparable, considering that she's able to take on a being like Doomsday, rather casually, kinda, a being that also killed Superman. Now, I know there is context behind, why he was able to kill Superman, but I'm just saying in terms of like who she's rivaling or who she's showing comparable feats and things of that nature to, where we get a good stacking of her power levels. The whole point of what Drinker is trying to establish here is that she could actually use some of those abilities to go up against somebody who's, more physically strong than her. The reason why I brought up my points was kind of like to show a good scale for her, but also kind of like point out to him that it's not entirely unreasonable for her to be able to hold her own against Steppenwolf. Given the fact that we literally see Superman outright overpower Steppenwolf literally later in this film on several occasions. So it's not entirely unreasonable. Is my whole point of that. Also kind of like showcasing a scale in which you could scale her off of.
Go in and rescue the civilians, and Wonder Woman single-handedly holds her own against Steppenwolf. Keep that one in mind for later. Also keep in mind the fact that she's already been shown capable of moving so fast that she can deflect a burst of automatic gunfire. You'd think that kind of ability would come in handy when you're in hand-to-hand combat against an enemy that's larger and stronger than you. Ah well, I guess she forgot about it.
What? What the fuck? Now, where he really falls apart, and which is why I pointed out my earlier statement about he just doesn't seem to know how a fight works, is going into more of this stuff in which I'm talking about the different variables and stuff in regards to around how a fight, especially in fiction, would tend to go, and all the factors that you would be incorporating. Now, specifically, I'm going to end up talking about speed in terms of combat speed, reaction speed, and travel speed. Now, reaction speed tends to be the lesser of the two because travel speed and combat speed tend to be more important. Now, in the case of what we're doing with here, Wonder Woman is showcasing her speed and combat. For both scenarios and stuff that he would be able to present there, it is highly unlikely that she would be able to take on Steppenwolf if she was only a bullet timer. She's actually much faster. So the fact that he brings up that scene in conjunction with the idea that she could use her speed, it's not necessarily that using her speed to an advantage if she was able to have one is a problem, but the thing is, she's clearly not. We see Steppenwolf on several occasions dodging much faster or being able to avoid. Most of the time he tends to outright tank because of how strong he is, but tend to avoid much faster weapons than bullets. So if you really want to sit there and try to suggest that Wonder Woman has a speed advantage, then the burden of proof falls on you in order to prove that she has a speed advantage over him, and thus we should be able to see her be able to apply that within the fight with Steppenwolf. So really, this ends up being one of those that he just gets wrong out of sheer lack of understanding and knowledge and ignorance, but it's actually very easy to understand and prove. I mean, just by watching the movie, it's clear that just because she blocked machine gun fire doesn't mean that she's going to be comparable to Steppenwolf in any way, who we've seen be much, much faster. There is absolutely no way. And even if she had an advantage with speed, how is that going to help her? I take you to another set of characters, that being Flash and Superman, where even though Superman is somewhat relativistic to Flash and somewhat able to keep up with him during the battle where he's fighting against Aquaman and Wonder Woman, it's clear that Superman, in the end, is not fast enough to be able to fully keep up with the Flash's speed. And before somebody says, oh, this is travel, no, this is indeed in terms of speed of combat. In fact, this incorporates all three aspects: travel, reaction, and combat. So in truth, Superman is not able to keep up with the Flash in here, but honestly, even though the Flash has a speed advantage, what could he possibly do against Superman? That's the problem with that. If Drinker is willing to concede or admit or acknowledge in any capacity that Steppenwolf is stronger than Wonder Woman, to any degree really, that he would say that it's an actual objective advantage that he has over her, then what is the point of bringing up her speed in the first place? Because no one would think that. I know he points that out, that you would think that her speed advantage, like, no one would think that. Everyone would be like, yeah, it doesn't matter that she's faster, he's much stronger. As we see with somebody like Flash and Superman. Flash is not going to be able to do anything because Superman's just too strong and durable. Even if he's faster than him, there is no way Flash is going to be able to get out of that scene alive. One hit from Superman is all it would take. So in truth, I'm going to be entirely honest with you, that whole point of saying that she has speed and you think she'd use it is completely irrelevant and goes out the window. It's just one of those dumb things.
Remember in Avengers how our heroes' special abilities were both unique and complementary, allowing them to be combined in cool ways to give them an advantage when they work together, thus reinforcing the point that the Avengers were far more powerful as a team than as individuals. Notice how it's basically impossible here, because their skill sets are either totally incompatible or they overlap to the point that they cancel each other out.
And on the final point here, there is indeed a lot to say. So first, starting off with this whole comparison of the Avengers in a later movie to the Justice League in their first outing. Notice how I made the specific distinction there, because obviously you're a smart person. Of course you notice that that's not really a fair and apt comparison of what you're using. You're using an already established team. You gotta remember, this team is A, not even whole together, and B, not as well as established. The Avengers already had one movie, which actually would be a more apt comparison that you would try to make. In terms of how did the Avengers work together and were they able to complement each other's powers and abilities in battle with the first Avengers movie when compared to the Justice League's first outing and how they tend to compare up. And I love how he just ignores that on several occasions they show they are quite compatible and are able to help each other out. And as far as I'm concerned, I didn't really see any overlapping in terms of abilities. It's just that it's pretty much what gets them, and that's a difference in terms of the Avengers in Age of Ultron, given this wide forward space, right, where they have more maneuverability versus this tight building corridor where everyone kind of has to be mushed and compacted together. And the fact that they work as well as they do is saying something in the least. Yes, I love it. I mean, I could literally point to you. Here's just one scene, just one example. Among the plethora of examples, just one example, that being the Flash hitting Wonder Woman. Like he's actually using his ability to effectiveness in order to be able to help her out. I mean, according to Drinker, none of this happens. You know, it's unlike the Avengers in Age of Ultron. Again, previously already established, And don't get me wrong, unlike Drinker, I'm willing to admit when they do complement each other. I'm willing to acknowledge and showcase that they do indeed complement each other in some aspects when it comes to this fight. But it's pretty cluttered and kind of a mess because so many things are happening all at once that you're trying to focus on all these characters who are really, they're not even really giving any real sense of direction. They're just kind of trying to push forward the best way they can. He then goes on to express the idea that Batman is utterly useless.
Jesus, Batman is basically useless in a situation like this, where they're up against an opponent with superhuman strength and endurance. Yeah, he's stronger and faster than an average guy, but he's still just human, and he's designed to combat human enemies. Somehow, this movie manages to make one of the coolest and most iconic superheroes of all time seem kinda weak and pointless.
What are your superpowers again? I'm rich.
I mean, for crying out loud, if that's the context in which you're going to go with, every one of these people other than Wonder Woman is useless. Especially if you're trying to put it in the sole context of, oh, they're trying to go up against Steppenwolf. I mean, when the battle is primarily focused on Steppenwolf, other than Superman, they all really do nothing. Other than, like, again, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, the rest of these guys are kind of useless by his own logic. My problem is, with him using this logic, is that they're not just going up against Steppenwolf. That everything that happens within this battle is not solely based around them fighting Steppenwolf. Otherwise, I'd be somewhat more inclined to agree with him. But they are also very useful in helping her out by engaging with the Lessers to keep them off of Wonder Woman's back while she's trying to kind of keep Steppenwolf's focus and trying to take him out and things of that nature. And also going to help her from occasion in that battle with the abilities they have. But Batman does have primary usefulness and function. I can see if he was only the technology guy, and then once he got out of his technology, he started getting his ass whooped by all these parademons. He just got absolutely destroyed, and everyone had to go and rescue him. But it's not the case. He takes out and takes on several parademons. I mean, for fuck's sake, how could you call him useless while you're showing scenes of him battling parademons? And even doing things like overpowering them or at least pushing them back. And before you say, oh, but he's a human fighters. These aren't humans? So that already becomes irrelevant as a statement. And especially when we're shown that they're supposedly, the parademons by their natural function are actually above humans, which is why they're able to take them out so easily. They're above human level fighters. So that's actually ridiculous of an assertion to make. The fact that Batman's so strong, again, like, bro, I love how you have to see this dude kicking one of them like 10 feet across and then says he's useless. The whole point of their interaction with this battle is to take down Steppenwolf, trying to complete a certain goal, stop him getting the mother boxes and all of that. And the plot problems that he ends up calling out about what this ended up meaning overall and how it's kind of like a giant failure are okay things to mention. But when you're talking about the fight itself and then you want to just sit there and say that he's fucking useless, it's like, bro, by your very logic, Avengers Age of Ultron, what was the point of Black Widow, Hawkeye, or dare I say even Captain America? But I mean, given some of his strength levels and stuff that we see, yeah, I can honestly see why putting him in a battle may yield some pretty good results. But come on, for fuck's sake, that entire fight, okay, should have just been Thor, Hulk, do your thing, we'll clean up once you're done. But the reason why I'm not going to hawk on it too much is because at least, unlike here, despite the fact that he brings this up as a point of contention with the movie about advanced technology and stuff like that, but whatever, I'm going to kind of like spare Hawkeye and Black Widow because despite literally like having like no armor or anything and just fucking arrows and bow sticks, basically having nothing in terms of comparable to the advanced technology of Hydra, but whatever. I'm just saying, different circumstances, different environments. Like I said, these are a lot of factors that come in, and you can't just sit there and blanket it as, oh, this is good because they do it like this that makes it better, when you don't understand or you're not showcasing what the difference is in the context of how these scenes are unfolding, how these two fights are unfolding.
Pull the trigger, ain't nobody gonna do for you. Pull the trigger.
Maybe you should pull the fucking trigger.
Anyway, with all that being said, that's pretty much it. Still love this video. It's kind of like in my personal opinion on Justice League. In my personal opinion, I honestly thought it's not necessarily that it was dog shit, but that it was kind of just like a meh. It's not something I would write home about. It's not good, but it's just kind of like one of those movies I'm like, you know what? There's so much wrong with this, But at the same time, given what I know about what, especially given the behind the scenes of production, as far as I'm concerned, this movie is just one of those, like, it's another DC movie that isn't the best, and dare I say, it's trash. But however, given a lot of the context and stuff in which I know about the production and stuff of this movie, it's kind of why I'm interested in seeing the Snyder Cut. I'm not gonna sit there and say that that's really gonna be any better, but who knows? Maybe it will be. Anyway, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
And to all my Gummy Knights, new and old, just remember, this is a man's world, but it would be nothing without his brain and his bronze. And lying is indeed the most fun that a woman can have, without taking off her clothes. Good night.
Desperate for attention, I aim to be your eyes, trophy boys, trophy wives. Applause, applause, no wait, dear studio audience, I've an announcement to make. It seems the artists these days are not who you think, so we'll pick back up on that on another page.